Okay, before we start with exploiting SQL injection, I want to show you a quick guide that will teach us how exactly SQL injection works and what are the steps that we need to perform in order to discover it. The reason we're going with the guide first is because this is arguably the hardest vulnerability that we covered by now, so we could use a little bit of practice in order to really get used to it and to really understand it. So what I want you to do is I want you to open your Firefox. In your search bar, type in SQL Injection Practice, and you should find this link to be among the first ones. It is SQL Injection-Hacksplaining. You want to click on that link, and the full URL to the example is this one, in case you want to type it in. Once we get there, we want to click on Get Ready and start the application. So once you click on that, it will load this application right here. This is our vulnerable website. These are the steps that we need to go through in order to exploit the SQL injection. And here we will have a small guide, which will come as this message. So the first one says this is the vulnerable application we will be trying to hack with an SQL injection. And it appears it's a bank application with login form. So let's move on to the next step. It gives us another window that says here are the application logs. What will happen here when you interact with the vulnerable application? Okay, one thing to notice is that logs is something that we wouldn't really have in real life attack. This is given to us just so we can understand this vulnerability. Okay, so let's go on to the next step. It tells us go ahead and try logging in with the following credentials: user@email.com and password. Let's type that in, user@email.com and password. Let's click on login, don't save, and nothing really happens. If we go to logs, it will say invalid credentials specified. But the next step tells us that guessing the password didn't work. Let's try adding a quote character after the password. And you will see in just a second why are we adding this quote character. Let's type that in first. So let's type password. Our email is already specified and let's just click on login. Now we get an error. An unexpected error occurred. This says this application crashed with an unexpected error. What could that mean? Well, let's go to the next step, which will lead us to logs that says the log shows an SQL syntax error. This indicates that the quote character messed something up in an unexpected way. And if we take a look at the logs, we do get syntax error, and here we also get the SQL query used to query our username and password, or in this case our email and password. And you will notice where the error is. Our credentials are being specified between the single quotes by default. Once we added a single quote at the end of our password, it messed up the syntax, because now here we have one open single quote and two closed single quotes, which gave us the syntax error. This is a really good indication that there is an SQL injection vulnerability on the application. Let's move on to the next step. Now it pops another window, and in this window we get the SQL query or the SQL code used to query our credentials to the database. And this code that we get right here is the same one that we got inside of our logs. It will change once we type something in. It will show us how it looks like inside of this code window. So let's go to the next step and let's type once again password question mark, or pardon me, single quote. It even tells us to do that again, and here we can see how it looks like. If I delete this single quote, you will notice that this is the entire SQL query. This also belongs to this command. But as soon as I type a single quote, it messes up this part that comes after. So this is why this single quote gave us an error. The SQL syntax is no longer valid once we specify it here. Let's go to the next step. It even tells us right here the quote is inserted directly into the SQL string and terminates the query early. This is what caused the syntax error we saw in the logs. Okay, we already mentioned that. Let's go to the next step. It says this behavior indicates that the application might be vulnerable. We already mentioned that as well. And the next step tells us to enter the following command. We specify the regular user email.com and the password is single quote or 1 = 1 -- Why are we typing that in? Well, let's type it first and then we're going to explain it. So let's go with single quote, space or, space, 1 = 1 -- If we go to our code window and we take a look at the query, it actually is a valid query. It's a valid SQL syntax. We're selecting everything from users where email is equal to this email and password is equal to nothing or 1 is equal to 1. And this -- at the end is just a syntax for a comment in SQL language. What this last line does, it simply says, find the user with this email that has a password to be equal to nothing, or if that user doesn't have a password that is equal to nothing, then check whether 1 is equal to 1. And if any of these two conditions are fulfilled, log us in to that account. Now, since probably password is not equal to nothing, this will not go through, but the second argument is that 1 = 1. And if any one of them is equal to true, then it will log us in case this user exists inside this application. And 1 is always equal to 1, so this should log us in. Let's give it a try. And here it is. It says even here, we are in. We successfully gained access to the application without having to guess the password. Now we are logged in to the bank account of that user with a simple or 1 = 1 command. So what we essentially did right here is we injected SQL syntax inside of this query and we tricked the application to execute our code just because it doesn't filter user input. Nonetheless, you saw how easy this was and we're going to take a look at more similar examples in the next few videos.